Hi, Ross here. Okay, I'm just going to start on photo number one, left to right with the Battersea painting. Okay, here we go. So this painting is done on the northwest side of Battersea, um, which I know reasonably well, but I didn't know of this bay until a friend from Barra informed me about it. I did it during January, and there was a big westerly blow which seemed to be raging for about 3 months out on the Hebrides, and there were massive breakers coming into the bay here, 3-4 meters high, and the rest. But up on the Macher, there was a place out the worst of the wind where I could paint, and um, unusually it stayed dry that day, but the air was still full of salt, and I didn't see a soul for about 10 hours when I was over there making sketches and getting ideas together. It was, yeah, a very special and lovely lonely day painting. The next painting is the Glen Lee, a big square rigger that's now moored alongside the old Transport Museum up the River Clyde in the heart of Glasgow. We ended up going there on the Scarb, and I had a charter on at the time with 8 guests doing a colourist trip where we make our way around different parts of Scotland, visiting, in the footsteps of artists before. And my guests were ashore that night in a hotel, and I took the opportunity to head out in a dinghy and sail in and around this nightscape of Glasgow, and make studies and record ideas for this picture. It was something I used to do a lot, night painting. Spent 3 winters doing it in Berlin, out in the city in the dark, snooping about whenever I'd gone to sleep, and it brought back fond memories. So the next picture is the Referendum at sea. This was inspired by a voyage with a friend on a lovely old sailing boat during the time of the vote for the Scottish referendum. Like many folk, we'd all had enough about the chat of it and just wanted to get on to the next stage, be it whatever. And that we set sail the night of the count, and we decided to go then, so we wouldn't sit up watching it on telly. Not that I have a telly, but to see what country we came back to 3 days later. So we took a course due west for the edge of the continental shelf, and along that trip you pass 20 miles west of Colonsay, you pass Dubartech, one of the Stevenson lighthouses. Very, very remote on a black and eerie rock. And we sailed past it at night, which made it even more eerie, with the big oscillating beam of light going round above the boat, and it was quite rough as well. So that was exciting. The small pastel seascape is on the west side of Iona, on a lovely beach called Portman, where the water is turquoise, but you can still have a dark grey and angry sky, and it's a great opportunity to use lots of colours from the palette. This is Parcels, like I said, and these are quite quick studies that I do just with the changing weather. The next one is another study of Dubartech Lighthouse, flashing at night and trying to get the final glow that I could remember from that referendum trip. That glow, that the last of the light when we sailed by. It was dark, but there was still a glow to the west. The next painting, the larger one, is called Andrew's Bottle, and that is one of the last paintings I did for this show, and It is again on the west side of an island, but this one Col. Andrew found my message in a bottle, along with his wife Jean, a few years ago after the big voyage I did for my first logbook exhibition. These were bottles I chucked over the side, and whose locations where they're found I was then going to paint, and this was one of the paintings from that series. So the bottle chose a lovely beach to wash up in. I had not been to it myself, and Red Rock Beach is called that for the obvious reasons that you know when you get there. Lovely warm colours, and it was a bit of a gem of a day after such a blowy winter, painting out in the elements. It was sunny, and there was a kind of hint the weather was easing off, but the next morning I had to get off the island pronto because there was another big gale system coming in. The next picture is over on the west side of Iona, and these are small and quick studies of approaching squalls and gales, which I enjoy watching them come in, because you don't know necessarily if the squall's going to get you or not. You're kind of waiting, ready to tuck some of the gear away, and sometimes you get a direct hit, and sometimes it slips by you. But you get this wonderful contrast of a dark wall of weather, but perhaps alongside a warm sunset light mixed in with a turquoise water. A very wonderful place to be. The next drawing is of studies of the Glasgow landscape at night from the River Clyde, and again in a different form, that last of the last of the light. You could almost have connections to that with some of the Dubarta Lighthouse studies, night studies, where you've just got that last warm glow, but in the city it's lasting longer and pulling in the orange from the street's lights. So this quite big picture is oil mixed in with pastel on board, and this is of Skerryvore Lighthouse. I've always had a fascination, like many, for the lighthouses and their kind of symbolic message they give out to mariners, and their strength they have to survive gales, unimaginable waves out in the winter when we're all cozy at home. I'd always wanted to see Skerryvore. It's quite a trek from Crinan, and generally you need, if you want to get right close to it on the boat, you need good weather. And it was built by Stevenson as well, like Dubartak, and they are quite similar lights. They've been flashing 150 years now, and the way they have been built, I would be very surprised if engineers could do such a good job these days. We had a fortunate run out here. We got a good spell of weather when I was coming back from charter, and I just dropped the guests off. So Anne and I headed out here, and during the painting session, basking sarks were jumping up and breaching right close to the boat, and we even managed to put the anchor down and get ashore onto the rock, which was covered in big grey seals that gave you a feeling that this was very much their home and you were the visitor. It was one of the most special days I've had out on the water, and I felt very lucky that we managed to fit so much in, and the fact I got a painting back. So I did this at anchor right next to Skerryvore Lighthouse. The next painting is Mary's bottle. Again, messages and bottles that were thrown over the side during my 2-month trip back in 2017, a winter voyage. 11 of these bottles got found, and this was one of the destinations I ended up exploring for this exhibition. by chance again that the bottle had selected the most stunning beach, and the rocks were all jaggy, mixed in with sand in the Macher, and it was a lovely day too. There had been gales on either side of this painting, but that day it was, I could even unzip the survival suit when I was working, and I slowed down, and in that respect the painting got more detail. I enjoyed that day. It wasn't such a mission. And later on, Mary and her husband came down and said hello and brought the bottle along, and they had pointed me in the right direction for the spot to paint with the bottle washed up. And as things went, a day and a half later, I ripped the bottom of the engine off the van, and it was Mary's cousin's husband, one of the engineers, one of the couple of engineers on Tyree that came and saved the day and fixed the hole in the bottom of the engine. So a nice end to the story, and it was good to have a message in a bottle, even fixing my van. The next painting was done in winter again on Iona. It's pretty big. It was a mission to get it down to the beach, dragging it across the Macher and then going back up for more materials. But I was tucked in out the wind, and like with so many of these pictures, the light was beautiful. It wasn't blowing a gale on this particular one, but the swell was wrapping round the rocks, giving them a white lick of water along the bottom. It was cold. I had my flask of tea and biscuits, and I was really pleased with this picture, and to get it back up and back to Croonan safely without getting it damaged. The next one is dropping pressure. So this is the day of Storm Brendan, which you'll all have memories from, and I had been extremely excited that this potential hurricane force wind was actually happening during the day, which is unusual because they normally happen at night. And I was all fired up for it and headed down in my van, and this was the morning's work before when the blow was just starting to kick in. So it was getting up to 50 knots during the painting, but it was cross shore, so it was passing by me, and I was again out the worst of the wind, but able to record the strength of the wind. I later went on to do another painting that's not hanging at the moment in the midst of Storm Brendan, and that was quite an experience. So we're on to the other big lighthouse, which I've discussed, this Dubartach, which I had passed in 2014 on the boat, which led me to going back out with Anne again last summer aboard the Scarb. We waited for the best possible weather and then bolted out there, having a night on the northwest of Colonsay, and then reaching out to the lighthouse, leaving at 5 the next morning. And it doesn't take much for it to get rough out there, and we were fortunate there was still a swell rolling, and I was unable to get the anchor down. I was quite nervous about being so far offshore and trying to anchor and trying to paint, and so we didn't take the chance. We couldn't just drift there while I painted because the boat was rolling too heavily. So Anne did a great job and took the helm of the boat and steered various courses into the waves and turn, and then have the waves behind us, and then turn and head back into the waves, so that there was trying to reduce the roll of the boat with always the bow of the stern into the weather. And after a few runs, I got the picture done. It's someplace out there, and the thought of being out there in the dark with an engine failure or damaged mast or something it would definitely brew up some pretty horrible nightmares. So we had a great run though, and would like to go back out on another lovely day. Didn't manage to get on the rock itself, perhaps another time. actually on the rock out of choice, not on the rock with the boat. Okay, that's it. Okay.